Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Part 2 of the Second Bite Podcast episode with Robert Glazer from Acceleration Partners. In the first half of this interview, we talked a lot about his experience with private equity, how he decided around timing and growth of his company and when he was ready for the next step. Obviously, you want to check out part 1 first. Continued thanks to our sponsors at Fiscal Advocate, who help entrepreneurs, agency entrepreneurs, organize their financial data in a meaningful way to help them make good decisions. I think you'll really get a lot out of the second half of this episode. So here we go with Robert Glazer.
You're trying to triple a business over 5 years. You don't triple a business by cutting costs.
Right. So step number 1, when we think about, in my mind, you sit in the boardroom, you with your new board members, and you talk about, we have a checkbook here. So if we're going to add capabilities or add businesses or add whatever, what do we go after? Can you talk a little bit about what those conversations were like?
So Mountain Gate has a playbook that they're pretty proud of. And one of the first things in the playbook that we typically do, and a lot of private equity firms do this, like we did a pretty big strategy project with Winterberry Group, like a market intelligence discovery group. And we looked at our clients and the customer reviews, and they've been part of due diligence. What do other clients want to buy from us and where the market's going? And we kind of came back with a plan. And then we were able to say, okay, what do we want to build and what do we want to buy? And how do we want to, do that? And so, that plan, that took a lot of time to put together up front, but it kind of got everyone on the same page of what we were looking to do and where we were looking to grow and strategically. The other thing that Mountain Gate does, and now that I'm on the board of some companies, I have recommended this to everyone. I'm sure other people do it. I had not seen before, but to me, it makes all the difference. There's a monthly finance call that's led by the CFO. That is where all the numbers and finance is discussed. Everyone knows them. Numbers are not really discussed at the board meeting. We don't need to. There's not a reveal. Everyone's been in the monthly financial meeting. We're running the business together. There's no surprise. So it really does make the board meeting around strategic issues. And I have seen, particularly for businesses and boards I've been on where things aren't going well, the entire board meeting gets hijacked by financial questions, and you end up, it's the CFO driving the board meeting when it should be the CEO. And so again, we do 2-day offsites every quarter. We have a plan and we keep circling back to make sure we're executing on that plan.
So now the first acquisition you did was what?
First acquisition was Streamline, which was a competitor of ours. So we actually started talking to, and they were in the market at the same time as us. And so we were able to kind of line that up really quickly. And I think you learn something with each one. So they did exactly kind of what we do, and we compete against them. John's on our leadership team. We really liked him. And we just felt like they had some West Coast presence and some areas of coverage and travel and stuff that we wanted to be in. So that was our first one. Our second one was actually part of a spin out and buying a book of business out of a company in Europe. Our third acquisition was buying someone like a smaller one that had a CRM tool in the sort of partnership space, and they had a partnership recruiting firm, which we felt was kind of a vertical expansion of what we were doing. And then our fourth was a influencer agency, IR Volt, that actually just merged. IR and Volt had merged, and some capabilities that we were trying really hard to find. We had looked at 80 different influencer agencies over 2 years, and was pretty shocked at the poor business models of most of them. And my thing is, if you're trying to buy a business, you want to buy a business, they figured out how to make money. not that you're going to try to have to figure it out.
So 80 over a couple of years obviously is quite a bit. Where did those leads come from? Were you discovering those? Was Mountain Gate going through a process? How did they get turned up?
It's a little bit of both. The first one, we knew them. They had been in the market at the same time. The second one was actually an opportunity that they reached out to us. The third one was someone we met through the industry. Mountain, I mean, most of their deals are off market, particularly the roll-ups. And then similarly, I think we got connected through actually someone on our team, another founder we had acquired who knew about the influencer business. So none of these have been, I think, traditionally in market, which I think sometimes is not uncommon from the add-on space. I think platforms tend to be more non-proprietary.
And so when you think about the overall service offering, it was the folks at Mountain Gate that kind of, I might have coined the term an arc of services.
Yeah.
Right. But affiliate and influencer is kind of one piece of that vertical. So do you guys want to be the dominant player in that slice of the vertical, or do you think about extending your offering to your client base?
Yeah. So again, as you said, Mountain Gate has some strong like beliefs around this, as did the firm that we worked with, the Winterberry Group, and that is like, you don't want scale just for scale, right? You want 1 + 1 = 3, and so a lot of their companies, have the two things. One, their software, their services around dominant software ecosystems. Right. So Tenuity was really like they bought an email company, and they had Facebook, and they had Google. Bounteous had Adobe and Magento, and I think a bunch of those other things. And so, but it was really about this 1 + 1 = 3. Like, what does our buyer want to buy from us? And it's all of the data and everything that we could see in 2021 and has really been excited. It's like, look, affiliate and influencer are going to start merging. They're going to start converging. They're too similar. And so we're going to have the same buyer, and there's increasingly going to be a chief partnership officer. And what are all the partnership services? We don't think you should go to an SEO firm to get partnership services, right? Obviously, there's always going to be the do everything firm that has one person in each role and says that they can do that. But like, we run complicated global programs with people on the ground who speak language in market. Like, I will go up any day of why you should not give your global affiliate program to a AOR agency that has one 23-year-old, that knows how to do one thing. So that was sort of our thing. Like, look, anyone wanting to do this stuff seriously, is going to come to a firm that specializes in partner marketing services and that does it for enterprise brands that can do it on a global basis. We saw B2B as part of that. We saw influencer as part of that, and we saw kind of recruiting as part of that, which was, part of that other acquisition.
So you'll kind of stay in your lane, if you will, and just become better and dominant at that.
Yeah, look, we're not trying to be a full services agency. We think maybe one day we could be this component of this for a full services agency, but we think that this is, a really exciting and high growth part of the market, and we don't think anyone's really dominating it globally, and that's the opportunity.
So let's shift a little bit and talk about Robert Glazer. So a lot of guys think, or women think, okay, so we do a transaction and I don't know, I've been doing this business for so long, I don't know what comes after that. I don't know what my life will look like to some degree. And one of the things, and we've had a couple guests on the podcast talk about just how much stuff comes to them and how important a stamp of success from a really smart group of people, like a private equity group that bought your company. So my first question is, have you experienced that? Has that been you're a made man now because you built something from scratch and you've sold it to a premier private equity group and now you're the man?
Sadly, no. And I think that probably wears off quickly for people. I think there's probably a halo or a 6 to 9 months, and then like people will forget about you, and they're on to the next thing. I think actually most people have the part of that checklist, by the way, if I went back, is like, I had been through YPO and EO. I had been to a lot of events around people that had done deals or sold their business and exited. I was surprised how miserable they all were. Like it didn't
because they don't have a life anymore.
Yeah, it didn't match the numbers that they were talking about. And obviously this is like a small violin problem that people don't want to talk about. But I had some warnings around that. And it seemed like the people that were the most struggling were the ones that, argued how to get out of the deal on day one. And they were celebrating that. Like the people that went from 100 miles an hour to zero were like really, really struggling. And so again, back to that list, for me, it was like, I know there's other stuff I'm going to do and whatever, but like, I want a 5-year transition period to figure that out. It's going to take some time. Like and so I had some good sort of research and market awareness on that too. But I think for a lot of people, you can see it even. You can see when people take a sabbatical, they get like 1 to 3 months, they're like super happy. 3 to 6 months, they're itchy. And then 9 months, they're like going crazy and out of their skin. And the phone stops ringing. People stop calling you. You start to have, issues of being relevant. I've just seen this movie like over and over again.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Tell me what the transition was like in year one between you and Michael. And did you work that out, the two of you? Did Mountain Gate have some perspective on that?
With Matt,
with Matt, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I was like, who's Michael? We'll get him working. We had really been executing on a plan, and I think we had a new marketing lead come in, and marketing was still reporting to me, and so it was sort of the one dichotomy is our sales was reporting to him, marketing was reporting to me. We decided the new marketing person would report to him, so we had changed some of that. Also, like people, what I found is like people are very fearful around change, and then they adjust really quickly. So we felt like that was a good time period where we would, have the partnership. Matt would be exerting himself a lot more and be the face of the business. And, had we done that a month later, I think people would have been like, it's just too much. But like people just, they overreact and they move on like the next day. And so again, the reality at that point when we made that move was I did not have any direct reports on the leadership team. I wasn't leading a lot of the calls. I was doing the stuff that I liked to do. I was speaking and working on new products and working on M&A, and we have been looking at tons of deals. And that, there is so much work that goes on as a platform. And people are like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, you'll never see the 100 conversations I had that led to nothing.
Just to keep people happy and in line, or
no? I mean, on the trying to add businesses side, right? The amount of it's like a sales pipeline. You have 100 conversations for then 2 that are serious for 1 sales that are done. So like it doesn't look very productive, but I can't even tell people the amount of conversations and times I spent with other founders and looking at deals that ended up going nowhere.
Tell me this, or tell us, the listeners, this. Because you've been on both sides, what do you think as a first-time seller or somebody that wants to partner with private equity or join a platform as a tuck-in? What is something that they think they know about their business that either they don't know or they should know better?
It's not special. It may be a good business, but it's not special. And as I said before, I ended up publishing a chart that's been used a lot on what goes into the value of a marketing services firm in the industry, because I had the discussion so many times and it sounded like I was just, talking to Todd and trying to tell you this to talk you down. But like, if I published the article in the chart, then I was like, look, this was a year ago. And look, people like Mountain Gate, they're smart and their values. And the last 10 companies that sold in your industry, and for us, right, there weren't a lot of partner marketing or affiliate. There was one. But there were tons of other agencies. And frankly, like from a valuation standpoint, an agency that has the same sort of revenue structure is like an agency. So I think everyone wants to feel like they're special and they want, their best quarter and they want the future, but that's just not how deals get done. It's not how deals get done with leverage, and you can't borrow money on earnings that you don't have today. And so I felt lucky because I had talked to a bunch of people. I felt like I really understood the market. I understood, look, and if you do some research and you want to partner with Mountain Gate, like they have a very specific amount that they, pay and don't pay. Like they're fairly disciplined. So if you think you're going to be the one that they sell to 20x for, like you're just not. So I think that's the biggest thing. The founders that I've talked to, my dad friend, the trust and estate lawyer is our lawyer. My husband's a venture capitalist, so I don't really need someone like Todd. Or I remember being like, what is a venture capitalist? It has nothing to do with a private equity business. Literally nothing to do with it.
The fact that you think it's the same is a reflection of the problem. Right.
Yeah, there was a business we looked at, where the person, I don't know, they're probably doing, $1 million in EBITDA, and somehow in their head they wanted a $25 million valuation for the business, and so they were going to get it to $2.5 million by Q4, and then someone was going to pay a 10x multiple, and I was like, the leading business in this industry just went for a 10x multiple and had 10 million EBITDA. And this firm did a process and launched and then shut it down within 5 minutes, because I'm sure the feedback was, you're crazy. Like no one's going to do this. So the amount of time and energy wasted thinking that you're special and that, you're going to be the exception, I think it's just much better to bet that like your business is going to be the rule.
There is a rule for a reason, right? But I think that feedback is excellent. So then the question becomes, well, how do
doing your job for you now.
You're doing a great job at it. So you keep going. So how do I, you go first and I'll answer. How do I know then what the right value for my business is?
I call someone like you, right? Or if I'm, and I think this is, I was just dealing with someone in a totally different industry in fashion, and a friend through a program I have, and they went to sell their business and got a generalist banker and never talked to multiple people. And so my advice was like, look, like bring in 4 bankers in your industry that have done deals in this, have them all present to you. You'll see by their presentations, their comps, what they're looking at, how they market, what they think it's worth. And then the one that's going to take it on is going to, mark their fee. Like you're going to have a pretty good sense of like, it does no good for you to tell someone that you can sell their business for $100 million when it's worth 5. Like you're just not going to do that. Like, and if anything, I think you're trying to generally lower people's expectations so you can exceed them. But when you go to these professionals and they all tell you the same thing, and you're like, no, I'm going to be the, I find in business and life, people focus on exceptions and they try to make, and again, there is an exception. There is that moment that the person paid a stupid amount. There's the 1 out of 99. The problem is it's 1 out of 99 and everyone talks about it, but it's the 1% outcome. I think it's better to normalize your expectations around the 99% outcome.
If you want to get an outcome, right? Because if you think about your logic there, the one that you just described has already happened. Ergo, there's only room now for the other 99.
Yeah. And usually it doesn't have a good outcome. And then everyone's like, I'm not going to make that mistake. I mean, I've talked to these founders. I can tell you none of the people who met all those criteria that I've talked to in the last 4 years have sold their business. Have they probably wasted a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of other people's time? Has their business probably suffered from them? Yes, all of those things. But they were so far expectations out of market. I remember being in a discussion, with a founder and getting to the end and saying like, look, like here's all of our terms and conditions. This is the Mountain Gateway. Like here's everything. It's all laid out. Like, and by the way, this, most people are not Mountain Gate or people like Mountain Gate. And there are a lot of other good investors. I just don't have a ton of experience. And a lot of people use the LOI to get you under and then beat you down. And that's why you run a process. And one of the things was in there was we said, hey, there's a, X year non-compete, and it's a standard thing in a platform. You can't, sell your platform you can't compete against the platform while you're an owner of it. Like it's just, it doesn't happen in any of these.
Right.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. And they were like, this other deal doesn't have any of this stuff. And you guys are like, you're over explaining this stuff to us. And we're just trying to be like really transparent. Like it's all here. Here's the contracts, all the stuff, like again. So they were like super dismissive to me. 4 weeks later, I get an email. Hey, we found that deal fell through. Yeah. I was really turned off by that point, which I thought was a very poor strategy to sort of kind of burn your bridges. But you see it over and over. Yeah. They're like, the perfect. Yeah. By the way, they got the purchase and sale agreement after the 1-page LOI, and it had all the same exact things because these are market-based terms. And this is the same problem with thinking that you're special and, you're going to sell your business and then compete against it. It just doesn't work.
So I'll give you an example as we wind down here. But we just signed an LOI the other day, and we had 4 offers for the business. And they were about the same, a little bit more in cash, a little bit more in equity, a little of this, like little stuff different. And I said to my client, tell me of these 4 groups, which one do you like the best? Who do you want to partner with?
Yeah.
And they told me, and I went to that group, and they were actually second. And I said, here's the thing. My guys like you the best. I just need to get your economics to match the rest of the market. And which is music to most guys here, most private equities ears, that they won, quote unquote. And then they can decide if the thing is reasonable or not in terms of to get them up to where they are. And then it comes back to your client to decide,
right. As you said, they like that. If you just said, look, we got all our bids, we need a second round of bids, they're really annoyed. They're like, I don't want to just driving the price up. And like, I could have been the winner. Right. But it's like, look, they like you the best. You're a little below, like, and here's what it would take to win. Like generally, I think they react favorably to that.
They do, is what always been my experience. Second thing is, as you know, once you sign an LOI, now the leverage shifts to the buyer.
Right. So which is why, not to cut you off, which is why you pretty well want as much as you possibly can have in the LOI details.
100% true. 100. And here's the point, because now we can negotiate these points, right? Yeah. So I've got one guy, and he's selling his agency. He wants to leave in a year. So his non-compete is going to be really important. This guy's in an industry vertical. So we're happy to have an LOI that says, or a purchase agreement that says, you cannot compete in this vertical for 5 years.
Yeah.
My guy's like, that's fine. But I don't want to, he can't not do performance marketing at all. That's
right. And some of them try to throw in blanket things. So you can say, look, named or in this vertical, there's a difference between saying it's rollover, it's tax-free rollover, right? There's preferred, there's employment agreement. These are all you have the same checklist. These are all, you don't have to have all the nuance, but it always comes up. Yeah.
Yes. And what I'd like to know is, before we sign the LOI, are you going to be okay with a restrictive covenant that says cannot compete in all of performance marketing or just this? And I want the buyer to say, yeah, well, okay, that's reasonable. We understand, because he wants to go do something else, or he wants to make software, he wants to do whatever. Those are things that, if we can debate and negotiate those before signing an LOI, you have a much higher degree of getting closed with a ton less stress. And then one last point, and then I'm going to, and I want to talk about what you're doing now. We'll wrap up. To your earlier point, though, we had, and it would be great, Kevin Biondi was the founder of a company called Sproutword. And we sold Sproutword to Power Digital a couple years ago. And exactly like you said, they had a great D2C platform, analytics platform, for D2C brands to ingest their first-party data, and they could buy media more effectively. And Kevin said something that was really smart. He said, listen, here's the thing. We have maybe the best data platform out there right now. Next year, it's going to be a pretty good data platform. The year after that, it's going to be the same data platform everybody has.
Yeah.
And so unless we pump a bunch of money into it, of my money that I don't want to spend, we're gonna get run over by people that have money to spend on this.
No, that's a smart entrepreneur. Yeah.
And it was just like you said, though. There's a moment in time where we're great, and most people only see we're going to add more SaaS revenue. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. in the absence of a competitive world out there where everybody else is doing stuff too. This is one of, Ben, this is one of Ben Kirshner's big drivers to do the deal with Mountain Gate as well. Everybody else is spending, all these freaking competitors have private equity guys, and they're going to be my competition in the future. I better man up.
Yeah, and let me tell you a phrase that someone said to me too. Again, I think this is aware, and if you look at our industry and the people who did deals and didn't do deals, a friend once said to me, and I think it might have been Dave Rudnitsky, said, when your industry starts consolidating, and then, right, this founder understood, but different, but when you start consolidating, you have sort of three options, right? Become a roller, roll in, or get rolled. And I think you have to not just look at what you're doing. You have to look at the market. You have to look at the speed of innovation. If everyone in your deal is consolidating in your industry and you're going to be the small independent one, like that can be great. But then if they all have software and multi-million-dollar platforms that are going to clients, and by the way, those happen in windows. And when you miss the windows, it can be there was a window in our industry in 2021. It's been closed since then. So, when those windows happen, there's a lot of momentum, there's a lot of interest, and you should, take advantage of it.
A quick comment. You mentioned the chart in the article that you wrote.
Yeah.
Our crack team here will make sure the link to that is in the show notes.
Okay.
So if you need to go to secondbitepodcast.com and look at the show notes, you'll be able to find a link to that. Tell me about robertglazer.com, the author and the speaker, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of the same things. I'm just not doing it 100 hours a week. I think as I started growing the business, I kind of leaned into writing about our industry. I wrote kind of book Performance Partnerships, which was a huge help for our business, and I think was really valuable. It's still like the training book at a lot of companies in our industry. I started writing about growing the business and culture and things like that, and so it led to some other books. And so I spend my time now split between still being the chair and on the board and supporting the platform, and I spend more time coaching people on the team one-on-one and working on onboarding and things that don't interfere. I'm doing a leadership training for our next kind of up and coming leaders in a few weeks. So things that don't interfere with the day-to-day operations, but where I can be helpful. Continue to look at M&A deals. And again, it's a big founder role, I think, to convince someone to bring their business onto your platform
join the team.
Sell their baby and join the team. And I think founders are inherently, that's a good match for them. And then outside, I'm doing more board and advisory, kind of helping other people who are on a little bit of the road behind, maybe the same people, when I was kind of looking ahead a few miles on the road, and spending time on my writing and book and podcast. And I do some speaking too. So it's really all about kind of sharing ideas that help people and organizations grow. That's what I enjoy. And that's kind of what I was doing, both inside AP and outside AP all those years.
And if somebody's listening, you were talking about your M&A and what you're focused on there. It's coming up to the end of 2024. What's at the top of Acceleration Partners' priority list for anyone listening that, from a capability standpoint or an acquisition perspective, from your side?
Yeah, I think we're looking to build out that partnership scope. So with other things that fall under the sort of partner performance rubric, we continue to look internationally, to expand, and we continue to look at the influencer space. As I said, I've looked at probably 50, 60, 70 businesses in that space, and want to, like, as fast as the space is growing. Again, a lot of those businesses, they're stuck somewhere between a slow growth software business and an unprofitable agency, which is not a great place to be. It's like combining two different types of businesses. So we continue to try to find the ones that are doing well and are looking to be part of something bigger.
That's great. This has really been a wonderful episode. I'm glad that you were willing to spend the time. I know you're super busy. It's great to hear of the success that you have had. So, Robert Glazer, thank you for making the time. Thanks to our friends at Fiscal Advocate. And great having you, Robert. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.